Good afternoon again, everybody. A glorious sunny day for most of us, I think. Big temperatures. I may at some stage take off my jacket today just as a special treat. For me, that is, not for you. So we've got a lot to get through today. We've got a guest who is at the moment battling a little with her technology. We may be looking at a blank screen while she's making a presentation the way things are going, but anyway, the technology has worked pretty well so far while we've been doing these, so I suppose it has to happen sooner or later. So lots of things happening at the moment, lots of new information coming out, lots of information being updated. Obviously, we all feel really sorry for our Prime Minister, who now is in intensive care. I gather he's getting oxygen through a mask rather than through a ventilator. And the lunchtime news, it explained that a ventilator is where the ventilator takes over the breathing. It sounded quite nasty, so hopefully he avoids that and comes back to us all pretty quickly. Meanwhile, we'll wait and see how well Dominic Raab does. Anyway, away from the government for the moment, just to keep you all happy, keep you up to date with the tie, because that seems to do quite well. These are stirrups. Not that I'm anything to do with horses. You know, it takes a big horse to carry me, but anyway, that's that. And this is the thing that might be of interest to you. This is my pocket square, is a journal entry page. How about that? That's a journal page. And this was actually given to me when we were across in America with our CEO, Jan Haugo, before she moved on to other things. But she and her husband gave me that as a gift, so that's lovely. And I think it's relatively unique. So anyway, today we have with us Claire Warner. And Claire will be known to many of you who came to Summit because she was one of our presenters, a very, very popular presenter. And her specialism is payroll, so very pertinent at the moment. Claire is also head of our exams. So she's the lady that makes sure that our exams match our syllabus and that we don't make life too difficult for you. And she's got, it says here, I'm reading her CV, I have to say 40 years experience within the payroll, qualifications and training industries, which encompass both public and private sector organizations, including a variety of software houses, where she's helped them to develop their payroll software. So she's definitely payroll through and through. And Claire, are you there?
I am, yes. Good afternoon.
Oh, we've got you there. Excellent, thank you. I was a bit concerned we were going to see you as that little white blob in the middle of a black screen for some time, but
I'd be quite happy being a white blob in a black screen. It's fine. Finally worked out how the technology works.
That's great. You've got some very tall ceilings there, obviously. That goes quite high. Anyway, really good of you to be with us. We've worked with you for a short while now, and you're very helpful to us in making sure that under normal circumstances that our exams reflect what's going on in payroll. All a little bit different at the moment. And so we'll have a couple of minutes to go through the basic bulletin from you, everything that's new and happened within the last 24 hours. Because when we spoke earlier, you did say you're getting updates almost on a minute-by-minute basis, which is a bit time-consuming to read them.
Yeah.
And then I think we'll open up to some questions and then perhaps see which is the main topic and major in on that at some stage. So is there anything that's happened within the last 24 hours that is earth-shattering?
I don't think there's anything earth-shattering at the moment. I think what we have is the administration in the background of government desperately trying to catch up with everything the ministers are saying. The publications that are coming out, so we had some guidance yesterday on the change to statutory sick payrolls. So that was announced way back in the budget, but the paperwork's only just come through.
Right.
But other than that, it's lots of tweaking bits to try and catch up with what the ministers are saying and actually answer all the questions that are coming through from the documents that have been issued, because they're not actually very clear. If you hadn't got that bit so far, there seems to be gaps in the strategic thinking, shall we say.
Yeah. I know. Again, when we spoke earlier, just to make sure that everybody was happy you're still around for today and not completely overpowered by paperwork. You were mentioning that you actually do payroll across 70 different countries, so some big multinational companies. But of course, the big thing is the lockdown means different things in different countries, and they've got different percentage payback, and some are paying, some aren't. It must be a nightmare.
It's I'm dealing with 70 different countries worth of legislation at the moment. Obviously, COVID-19 is the only subject that pretty much that is coming out from any country, and I will end a lot of days going, I have no idea what I've just done. Because you'll read something on Italy, something on Spain, something on the Netherlands, then something on France or the US or out in Asia. Everybody is doing something, but they're not consistent. The same as the lockdown rules that we're experiencing now are nowhere near as stringent as they are in other countries. Everything is slightly different.
But as payroll people, you are a specialist person. You are allowed to go into an office and work. Apparently, it's one of those protected professions. That's what we're told. I suppose people need their payroll.
For the first time in my entire career of nearly 40 years of doing payroll, we are now classed as key workers. So payroll has always become second fiddle, whether that is either to finance or to HR. We always sit there, but we're not quite there. So we rarely have a payroll director. So there's always a finance director. There's usually an HR director. Very rarely is there a payroll director. But for once, we are now classed as key workers. So yay, it's only taken 40 years. But of course, we are, and I was chatting to a colleague this morning, and she was like, all my friends are furloughed, and yeah, they're having not a great time, but they're getting paid for doing no work. And I'm like, yeah, what those people don't understand is the amount of work that we in payroll are trying to do to keep them getting that 80% of money.
Yeah.
And I mean, my workload has gone, I would say it's more than quadrupled in the last 10 days, 2 weeks. And I'm getting over 100 emails of legislation a day. And you've got to sort through them. And everyone has something slightly interesting. Maybe it's not relevant, but maybe it is. So there's been stuff out about exams this morning. There's been stuff out about care workers, and you've got to work your way through it because you don't know which of your clients need that information.
Yeah, no, that must be good. You mentioned exams there. That made my ears prick up for a minute. I mean, these are all these people who can't do their centre-based exams anymore.
Yes, yeah. So there has been some guidance come out on how those grades are going to be dealt with. So teachers are being asked to send assessments in to the exam boards by, I believe it's the end of May, based on what they believe would be a fair representation. Now, there are obviously issues with that because some people work really hard all year and know that they're not going to perform well in an exam situation. However, others don't do a lot of their coursework and think they're going to get through on the exam. And that being the case, if that were to occur now, their grades would be a lot lower than they might have got through doing an exam.
Sounds a bit like the directors who are complaining that they've paid themselves a low wage and a dividend and they're not getting any more money.
That's right. They can only claim on their salary.
No, exactly. Yeah. Oh, well, that's interesting. I mean, we're fortunate, as you know, that we are all electronic on our exams. We were, world leaders as far as putting these online and having good exams, even proctored exams, so that, your computer is literally watching you to see what you're doing and making sure you're not nipping out and getting a book or something. So, it's, I think there's a lot of it was planning. I have to say a lot of it was fortunate that we obviously didn't know this was going to happen, and we have the systems in place now. But Yeah, I can see there being quite a few upheavals out there, but
and I think what I'm hearing is a lot of universities are looking at ways to put their lectures and stuff as e-lectures from September, should the need arise. Don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. In some cases, it's, yeah, we do still need face-to-face sometimes.
Yeah.
But I don't think it all needs to be face-to-face. We have the technology. In my humble opinion, I think the world will be a very different working place when we come out of this. Right. I think a lot of businesses, and this is just my opinion, but I think a lot of businesses who are struggling with overheads will suddenly realize that actually people can work from home.
Yeah, I think there will be a group of people who can do that. I mean, our staff, and every single one of them has literally picked up their phone, gone, and they're now working from home. They've got their computers, and I have to say they're doing a brilliant job. But it is difficult because we've just been saying this morning. We've had every Tuesday morning we have our team meeting and training and whatever else we need to do for the first hour. We don't open up until 10. We're all getting a bit confused because we're getting emails, we're getting messages, we're getting WhatsApp, we're getting groups or teams. Sorry, some of us are on this, and the thing is, you can't remember which one you're dealing with in any particular problem. There is almost too much communication going on.
And I think there is, and I think one of the problems certainly I have with some clients is the inconsistent method of communication. So I think if we could all find one that worked and stick to it, it would be better for everybody. So if everybody's using Skype or if everybody's using Teams for their instant messaging, it would be much easier to keep up with. I mean, even within one organization, there's 3 different methods that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but are they using that one or are they using another one? And you've got to run around and rack your brain, and desperate not to fail to respond to a communication. So
and I think the problem we have with Teams is that people keep creating teams. Different teams, because they want to go and speak to one person. It almost becomes a team, you know. So,
well, it will be better when Skype disappears later in the year, because Teams is replacing Skype. So, you know, once Skype disappears,
I didn't know that. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Skype is, I think, Skype for Business certainly is only going to be available until later this year, I think, and Teams is the replacement for it. So, hence, at the moment, we have an overlap with everybody using both. And also there is an assumption, of course, that everybody knows how the technology works. And some people just simply don't. And why would they? You know, I've got a friend that's now working at home. She's never worked at home in her life. She's petrified of technology. We've got her all set up and she's working, but should anything go wrong, it's just like don't know what to do now. It's a different world. You can't just wander down the hall and say to IT, fix this, please.
No, I think most of our members are pretty computer savvy. They're all working on the cloud, but they tend to be, I think you're probably talking about the much larger organizations where you've got a huge batch of desktops sitting there churning through the information, as tend to be a bit different to that. It's a generalization, but certainly that is the case. But as we're talking payroll finally, having put the world to rights, I think perhaps we ought to get round. And one of the big questions that has been coming up for some time now, and I'll preempt this, this is the calculation of pay towards somebody who's on a 0 contract. And, you know, if they've been working for 3 years on a 0 contract, then it's an average over 3 years. But what happens for somebody who's been working on for 6 months or something like this? How are you dealing with that?
Okay, we've got 2 options for these, what they term as flexible paid people. So whether they're on a 0 hours contract or a flexible contract that, you know, their hours vary depending upon the year, time of year maybe. So you do get some people that are on like an annual hours contract, whereby if you looked at hospitality, for example, over Christmas and the New Year, they might be really busy, and then January and February, slopes off a bit. Now, there's two options. We can either take the salary that they received for the same month last year, or we can take an average of the figures that we have. So if they have worked for 6 months, we can take an average of those 6 months.
Can we take the one that is the best for the employee?
It does say that you can take the one that is most realistic. So yes, you could.
Great.
Could I just get a little extra clarification on that?
Yeah, sure.
Hello, hi.
Because what people are asking, I have children rattling at the door, with you. What people are asking is, what is the same month? Is it the same month last year as the month they are now going on furlough?
Yes, so it would be the month that you are looking to pay the furlough for. So you can only furlough for a minimum of 3 weeks. So if you went on furlough from, let's say, the 1st of April, you would be furloughing for the pay period of April. You would look at what they earned in April last year.
Okay. And then say they've been employed for 6 months, but they only worked in 2 of those months. Do you average it over 2 months, or do you take the working average over 6 months?
Right, now there the guidance isn't clear. However, what I would do is I would use exactly the same calculation as you would for holiday pay, because the guidance that they're using in terms of what's included and what's excluded is very, very similar. So in that case, you would take the hours that they'd worked against the period of income that they'd worked. So if they'd worked for 2 months, the hours that they worked during those 2 months against the hours that they had been paid for, so the value, to get an average hourly rate and work it back that way. Did that make any sense? No.
No.
No, okay.
Well, we'll wait and see if
Not quite to me, I must say.
A set of other questions. Actually, something that was coming in before we knew about coronavirus was this averaging of overtime across holiday pay. Is that still all going ahead?
Oh yeah, nothing has changed. So the new stuff that was coming in, so we'd got the change to the holiday pay calculation, we'd got bereavement pay coming in.
Yeah.
We'd got IR35 is the only thing that has been delayed.
Yeah.
So that's been delayed until, as at this moment, next April. But there's no, we don't know where we're going to be in 6 months' time as to if they're going to delay it again or not. So everything pretty much, apart from the IR35, everything else has come in. It was already laid, the legislation was already there, it became effective, oh look, yesterday. New tax year. So yeah, absolutely, the new bereavement leave and pay, that has become effective. Possibly more pertinent now than ever before, I would guess. But everything else that we knew about, there was a rumour that the minimum wage increase was going to be withheld, but that hasn't come through. So the minimum wage increase has also gone through.
And I've just been sent a note saying, don't go off subject, Gary. That's come from Amy. So, yeah. So, Amy, all right, get me back on subject. What other questions have we got there?
Well, all of this is interesting and pertinent, so I just want to make sure that we're clear on everything as we go along. So I'm interested in the minimum wage increase as well. But it was just to go back to the working out the average income for those variable hours, 0 hours people.
Right. So I would do it. And again, the guidance isn't clear. So I'm falling back on the guidance that is there for the other calculations that are using an average. I can't see that it would be any different. We've taken a long time getting where we are. So if somebody has worked 2 months in the last 6 months, you would take the value of their income for the last...
Sorry. Somebody still has a motorbike apparently next to me. But carry on.
I was thinking, oh, yeah, okay, the dog's gone for a walk. It's not her making a noise.
No.
So you take their income for those 2 months. So let's say they earn easy figures, £1,000 a month for those 2 months. They've worked 30 hours a week. I can't do the calculations with that piece of paper. But you would take the hours that they've worked to earn those that amount of money and divide it down to give you an hourly rate. You would then calculate the average hours that they had worked as well. So if they'd got flexible hours and they'd worked 20 hours one week, 35 another, 15 another, you would average those out over the earnings. So you would multiply the average number of hours that they worked during a period and multiply it by the average hourly rate, assuming that hourly rate was not below minimum wage, because we can't do that.
So what about seasonal workers? Obviously, if they work for 6 months of the year, because we're coming into the summer period now, so there'll be a lot of seasonal workers coming on board. Can they expect to get to be furloughed this year and be given what, the average for what they got last year and over the same fixed period, or what?
Again, we have the option to use the salary that they received last year as the furloughed amount, or we can take an average of earnings. So we do the calculation and work out which one is most reasonable. What I think needs to be very clear, and the government have been very, very clear about it, the government are using employers to be the benefit agency at this point in time for this situation. They do not want people to be worse off. They don't want employers to say, we can't furlough people because they don't work every week or every month for us. And indeed, where people have had a contract that's expired, or they have left their employer after the 28th of February, but not restarted another employment. So say we're going to take a month off before their new job, their new employer cannot furlough them, but their old employer can put them back on their payroll and furlough them. So the government want the employers to take advantage of this situation to make it as least painful as possible for the employees.
So that's quite helpful, as long as you've got an employer that will play ball. And although we had this question as well, the ex-employer takes the person back on, and 2 months into their furlough, they get pregnant or sick. What happened? Yeah, there's going to be some difficulties, aren't there? I don't expect you to answer that one now, but I mean,
there are, and realistically, that employee, when we get out of this, if they're employed, if they're on furlough and then get pregnant, it's going to be 7 or 8 months before they need to consider maternity pay. So it's not an immediate problem. That would only become a realistic problem if furloughing went on for 6, 7, 8 months.
Oh, yeah.
Which we would all like to think isn't going to happen.
Yeah. But there has been some good news coming out, some clarification on bonuses and contractual extra amounts. That was helpful, I think. It came out, I think, at the end of last week, didn't it?
Yeah, and that is clearly saying that if you are contractually obliged to pay somebody an amount, then that needs to be included in that calculation. If you are not contractually obliged, so for example, tips or ad hoc bonuses that directors might award themselves, oh look, the company's doing really well, we'll just have an ad hoc bonus payment to the top 5% of the company, for example. That isn't a contractual payment and therefore is excluded.
What about a car scheme, where somebody gets a certain amount of money, but then goes and actually purchases their own car, but uses that to pay back the hire purchase or something?
Okay, it again hasn't said specifically that that's excluded. What they have said is employers need to claim the amounts that they believe are due. So the revenue aren't going to calculate these amounts. So when we do get to a point where we can claim, and that's not yet, the portal for claiming isn't open yet. It's due to be available at some point during April, but we've not been told when. They have said that the employer should put in a claim for the 80% that they believe the employee is due.
Yeah.
So it's down to the employer to calculate that. So if they take total gross pay, for example, and that includes a car allowance, and they take 80% of that and claim that 80%, nobody's going to argue. There is an issue with salary sacrifice, because where people have salary sacrificed correctly, their salary should have been reduced. You can normally only opt out of a salary sacrifice scheme on a life-changing event. And the government have deemed that COVID-19 is a life-changing event. So employees are able, within the realms of all the normal employment legislation that sits behind it, to opt out of salary sacrifice schemes. So if, for example, you are in a salary sacrifice scheme that gives you childcare vouchers, clearly just at this precise moment, you don't need childcare vouchers because they're all at home with you, or the majority are at home, then you can opt out of that salary sacrifice scheme.
Oh, that's handy, yeah.
Which increases your salary back up to the amount that you had opted out of. So, say it's 200 quid a month. And your 80% is then increased by that £200.
So not £160 in the pocket.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, that's great.
But
Amy,
equally, sorry, what I would say is equally that's useful when what you are sacrificing your salary for is of no use to you at the moment.
Right. Okay. Amy, questions?
We've got loads of questions. Loads of questions. I thought I was handling it, but then I tried to scroll down. There's more of them. I thought let's start with a nice, easy one.
Oh yeah.
Does the furlough need to be in blocks of 3?
Yes. Well, the simple answer is yes. The minimum you can furlough is for 3 weeks, but then it can be for any duration above 3 weeks. If you take somebody back in off a furlough because you suddenly have some work for them to do, you can take them off a furlough for a week or 2 weeks, and then you can furlough them again, but that second period has to be for a further 3 weeks. And just to be clear, you have to, if you are being furloughed, do no work at all for that employer.
Right, can I take a question on from that then? If you say every 3 weeks, that presumably means you claim week 3, week 6, week 9. Does that mean you have to? Does that mean you have to pay on those weeks?
No.
Or could it be? Or do you have to do 4 weeks on a month if they're totally furloughed?
No, if they're totally furloughed, the minimum you can furlough somebody is for 3 weeks. But after that, if you choose to, if your payroll is a monthly payroll, you could furlough them for a month and you could put in the claim for that month. So I believe, and I've not seen it any more than anybody else has, but I believe that the way the portal will work when it's available is the employers will submit the claim for 80% of their payroll, and then they will get a refund of their 80% cost plus their employer's NI plus the statutory minimum pension contributions.
Right, yeah.
So they could do it each pay cycle. What they're saying is they don't want you to do it, is my understanding, for each weekly payroll.
Yeah.
And you therefore, furlough has been sorry about my phone. Furlough has been set at a minimum of 3 weeks. So you can do it for 5 weeks or 10 weeks or 3 months. And at the moment, bear in mind, this is only relative for 3 months from the 1st of March. So when we do get this portal open, we can backdate it to the 1st of March if we are required to do so.
Okay. Amy, I can see the numbers stacking up here of questions, so we must let you have a bit of time. Yes. Give Claire time to get a drink.
I should have gotten a drink, before we started.
Have you not got your children trained?
I really don't know. They're just like, and they just eat constantly, don't they, kids? Always hungry. Like, you should be getting me a cup of tea, guys. Maybe one day.
Only 5 and 3. It's a bit early yet.
This is, well, you know. Well, present. Somebody asked an interesting question. Amanda wanted to know about redundancy after furlough. Is the redundancy payment based on the furlough payment?
All right, that is really interesting, and it has been challenged a couple of times. There is no great deal of detail yet. However, what I will say is furlough is all about protecting those jobs. So part of the deal for going through the process of putting employees on furlough is to guarantee their jobs at the end of this.
It might look a bit suspicious if they are furloughed until the end of this and then they're immediately made redundant. I don't think that will be. I think that's going to be frowned upon.
Yes, and I would agree. The furlough scheme is actually the term furlough has come into the forefront for us, if you like. But it's very much around, it's the job protection scheme is what it was launched as.
Yeah.
And that's what they're keen to do.
Amy. Oh, somebody bringing you a drink?
No, that's the dog coming back from a walk.
Ah, right. Amy, questions? Incidentally, I've just noticed on the top of the screen here, we're getting some questions now from Facebook. There was a query yesterday as to whether or not Facebook questions were being answered, but I can see them there, so you are grouping them together, so that's great.
Yes, we are omni-channel here.
You're having a great job there.
Oh gosh, so many questions. Okay. Let's talk about holiday pay. I'm sure there will be more questions about this, but Linda has asked if furloughed workers earn holiday pay, if that's usually paid as a percentage of their weekly earnings.
Interesting. Okay. Without going and checking, I could tell you what I believe, but I don't want to just guess. So can I come back to you on that one and provide you an answer to send out?
We like to fox our experts every now and then. That's good.
My gut reaction is that actually holiday pay shouldn't be paid as a percentage of weekly earnings. So, so I'm a bit wary on maybe the context of that. So I will go and check. I believe that as it stands at the moment, holiday pay would be calculated on the previous 12 months worth of, or 52 weeks worth of salary. At this point in time, there has been no change to legislation to say that the period of furlough can be excluded and you need to go back to the normal average pay that they would have had before. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if that comes through. Let me quantify that because Amy's looking a little confused.
Do you know what? Actually, I was looking confused at some of the questions, to be honest.
Okay, so the change has meant, with effect from April, that we had to calculate holiday pay as an average of earnings over the previous 52 weeks. Now, they were 52 worked weeks. So if there were 4 weeks of holiday in there, we had to exclude that and go back 56 weeks to get 52 actually worked weeks. Now, my gut is saying these furlough weeks aren't worked weeks. So if they are furloughed for 8 weeks, my gut is telling me that that's like holiday. we would need to take that out of the equation and go back to fully worked weeks to do that calculation. But there is nothing in legislation at this point in time to say that. Now, the reason I was a bit wary about the actual answer to the question was that I'm not sure if the person asking the question was paying holiday every month as part of their salary, or were actually paying it when the holiday was taken and doing the average pay calculation at that point.
So as it stands at the moment, holidays are not taken as part of furloughing. They are if you are working from home, you have to take your holidays, but if you're being furloughed, you will be asked or made, I don't know which it is, to hold your holidays over. So as soon as we come out of lockdown, there's going to be a bit of a rush to get some holidays in, but and they can hold them for up to 2 years.
Key workers can. It hasn't been stipulated that everybody can. There has been a change that key workers, and again, the reason for the timing on that, I believe, was that we were coming up to the end of the financial year for many local authorities, for example, whose holiday year runs April to March. And if people had still got holiday remaining that they had to take because they'd not taken their quota through the year, the legislation is a use it or lose it situation. If they had not relinquished that particular rule and allowed people to carry that leave over, there would have been an influx of people taking annual leave at the point when people were needed to be at work. And that could well have included NHS workers, who a lot of NHS authorities have an annual holiday year that runs from April.
All right, okay, that's helpful. Amy?
Yeah, well, Marie Benstead does want us to confirm holiday accrual over the furlough period. Are we right in thinking that the employer can stipulate how much holiday somebody takes whilst they're furloughed?
Again, there hasn't been a specific direction from government on what to do with regard to how you can insist people take holiday during the furlough period. But if we look at it a slightly different way, let's turn it on its head and say, if I'm being furloughed and I'm being forced to take leave while I'm being furloughed, I should get 100% of my holiday pay and not be furloughed. Does that make sense? Because actually, my holiday pay, I'm paid at my normal salary. So why am I then being paid 80% of my holiday while I'm on furlough? So I would actually say, again, looking at it and applying a bit of logic, because there is nothing out there yet, if somebody is taking their holiday during a furlough period, they should be paid 100%, because it's holiday pay, it's not a furlough.
Right. Now that's a
bit controversial, that one.
Yeah, okay.
That's really interesting. But again, what you're saying is the guidance doesn't state anything specifically.
The guidance doesn't yet state anything. And as I said at the beginning, I feel really sorry for the guys trying to write the documentation that sit behind all of this, because they must be working 24/7, and people keep throwing these questions at them that these aren't payroll people that have written this guidance. They are civil servants, and they don't necessarily understand all the nuances of what we are going to be trying to understand and process. So, you know, the more we can send questions into them, they're being really good. They are getting back to us with answers, but they're not there yet.
Ellie Appleby just queries whether the changes to the working time regulations applies to everybody or just certain workers, because he points out that apparently point 6 of the guidance says that all employers are subject to the regulations. and
yes.
therefore the change to the coronavirus amendment, the regulations.
Yeah, there are no exceptions to, sorry, there are no exceptions that I am aware of to these rules. Big businesses are, they can claim funding in a variety of different ways, but the actual employment law, the payroll specific requirements of what we have to do in terms of furloughs, and indeed the changes to working time regs for the holiday pay, they impact everybody. There is no get out of jail card on those.
So are you saying that it's sort of a matter for the employer and the employee to kind of negotiate what will happen around the holiday pay, as in, or the holidays when they are actually taken?
Right. First off, an employee needs to agree to be furloughed.
Yes.
It's not something the employer can force on them. However, if they decide that they don't want to go down the furlough route, they may be made redundant because there is no work for them. So I can't see any logical reason why anybody would say, I'm not going to be furloughed. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Don't understand why you would not agree. What you could find is that employers, and I have seen this done a couple of times, they'll say, okay, we've got enough work to keep you going for a couple of weeks. Then you need to take 50% of your holiday, or 2 weeks of your holiday, or a week of your holiday. And then if we're no further forward, we will go down the furlough route. So what some employers are doing is stating that employees need to take a portion of their annual leave. How enforceable that would be under legislation, if it was ever to be tested, I don't know. Because under normal legislation, you would have to give a certain amount of notice to take holiday, and unless it's written in your contract, you cannot normally dictate when holiday is taken.
I've seen something somewhere that said that you can force people to take holidays in this period, but you must give them the equivalent of double the amount of notice for the period that you're making them go on holiday. But there has been quite a lot of
legislation. That is standard. So if you want somebody to take 2 weeks holiday, you have to give them 4 weeks notice.
Right. Yeah.
Now, and equally, if I want to take a week's holiday, I have to give a week's or 2 weeks notice.
Yes. Okay.
The problem with this, and the problem I foresee with holidays, is a lot of people use their holidays to do childcare through the summer holidays, for example. So if people have had to take their leave now, what happens in the summer when they need to take leave? Should we be back to some semblance of normality where they need to take leave to take care of their children? There is a scheme, it's not in the UK, I have seen it, and for the life of me I can't remember which country it was, where they have what they called paid leave. They call it paid leave. So the employer pays the employee to take time off of work. So be that, let's say it's a month, and that month's salary is claimed back, not financially, but that person has to work those extra hours over the remainder of the year. So it's not taken as holiday, it's taken as paid leave. So we would pay you as normal for April, and then when we come back to normal working, say in June, those hours that you were paid for in April when you didn't work, you can work extra hours for the remainder of the year to pay back those hours.
I'm glad payroll's so simple. It's easy, isn't it, really?
It's a piece of cake. I don't know why people think it's complicated.
No, not at all.
You have to do a bit of mathematics, a bit of employment law, a bit of common sense. A bit of everything goes into the pot, and you somehow come out with an answer the other end.
Right.
Forgive me if we've sort of dealt with this, but Melissa Flatt is just wondering about calculating the holiday pay and wondering if it can be the average of the previous year as a fixed rate for 2021, or should it be recalculated every holiday period? And the example she gives is for farm workers, where the hours are higher in the summer than in the winter.
Okay, that's exactly why the change came in, so that it takes a 52-week average. So we, in theory, should recalculate the holiday pay every time holiday is taken. However, I do know that what a lot of companies would do is they will base it on a fixed sum of money and say, we're going to pay you this amount for your holiday for 2021. But at the end of the year, do a calculation to check that the employee is not out of pocket.
What are holidays? Will somebody explain that? Anyway, carry on.
Nothing that we're going to be getting in the near future.
Yeah.
And if you look, I think it was today, they sent out a notification that international travel should be foregone for the foreseeable future. So we will all be staycationing if we get to go anywhere this year.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, got to support local. What do they say? Live local.
Yep.
Okay, so somebody has anonymously asked, on a flexible contract, can we switch between the average hours and the same month last year so that we use the highest figure? And I checked, and they are referring to, for the same employee, can you switch between the calculation?
There's nothing that says you can't.
Great.
Yep. I would take the calculation on a month-by-month basis if it was me. So I would do those calculations on a month-by-month basis, and as long as you could justify when the audit comes at the end, if you are fortunate enough to be audited and can justify why you made those decisions, I don't think there'll be a problem.
Fantastic. And Usher, probably not the Usher, has asked a question about calculating the weekly payroll again, and the fact that there are different numbers of weeks. They said if someone's paid, I'm going to go specific, £2,010 and 1p gross per week, good for them, and the maximum employer can claim is £2,500 for the month. Can the employer spread this over a month? My client is happy to pay the £2,500 per month.
What?
I don't know what that means, actually. Presumably you've got no choice, have you, really?
Okay, right. The employer can claim a maximum of £2,500 per employee per month. If the employer wants to top that up to £10,000 a month, which is effectively roughly what that would be, they can. There's nothing stopping them. But what I also need to point out is that £2,500 and any top up are both taxable, nickable and pensionable.
Yeah.
So it's not 80% of your salary in your pocket as a net payment, as it is in some countries. In this country, that £2,500 maximum is subject to tax, national insurance and statutory pension contributions.
There actually have a couple of people have asked just for clarification on that. So you now pay that based on the 80%. If you're only paying the 80%,
yes.
All of those calculations based on the 80%.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And Sharon's asked, is the pension reclaim based on pensionable income or all income? Presumably that hasn't changed.
No, the rules on that haven't changed at all.
So what's the answer?
Again, we go back to are they part of a salary sacrifice? Because if they're part of a salary sacrifice, then their pensionable income is different from their taxable income and their nickable income. So the rules actually haven't changed. Whatever the pensionable pay was before, it will now be 80% of it if that's what they're claiming for.
Okay, I think that was clear, hopefully, even for me. Maybe a couple of ethical issues now. Amanda says, if you've been furloughed on 80% of pay, can they, the employer, presumably say, we may, according to your contract and without your permission, lay you off on guarantee pay and pay you just £30 a day for only 5 days in any 3-month period?
Not if they've done the furlough scheme. The furlough scheme is literally, if the employer is claiming that furlough payment, they have to, under legislation, pass it on to the employee.
But could you furlough somebody, then take them off furlough and then lay them off?
You could, in theory, yes.
Which would be cruel.
It's a bit mean because they're not actually paying the furlough payment. So that makes no sense. But in theory, yes, they could.
Is that the kind of thing somebody might want to get litigious about one day?
In theory, everything that is done that is going to be detrimental to the employee could go down that route, because that's the sort of society we live in. However, I don't understand why somebody would want to do that if they're not paying that furlough amount anyway. If it was a cost to the employee, a cost to the employer, even if, I mean, it is costing them nothing other than the processing of the payroll. So they're not paying national insurance, they're not paying the pension contributions, they're not paying the 80%, they're not legally obliged to top it up by the additional 20% that's missing. The cost to the employer is zero. Why would they not do it? And if that was taken to if that was reported to ACAS or HMRC, I think that would come back to the employer, I believe, in the current situation, for them to say, this isn't costing you anything, why are you not doing it? We are being told that we are the benefit system at the moment for employees, and there is no way that the government can cope with it without putting it via payroll. So, and equally, if an employee thinks their employer is claiming the furlough and not paying them, they can be reported for that as well. Not that anybody's getting any money at the moment, but yeah.
You can submit a claim and just wait.
You can't even do that bit at the moment, but yeah, we'll get there.
That's fantastic. Okay, Hazel is wondering if an employer can choose to top up to the full 100% certain employees and not do it for other employees.
Ooh, wonder which piece of legislation supports that one then. There would be equal pay. There'd be possibly sex discrimination. Yeah, there's lots of pieces of legislation that sit behind that. If it was me, I would say it's all or nobody. I don't think, unless you can justify why there is a difference, you would be able to do that legally. All employment law remains in place. So if it was illegal to pay somebody more before, it remains illegal to pay somebody more now.
Okay, very clear. Lovely. Somebody asks, can a company still trade under the power of its staff if a director is furloughed? And actually, we've had this before where somebody said the director doesn't really do any work anyway. Can they just furlough themselves?
Okay, well, there's nothing stopping a director from being furloughed. And actually there is, I was reading last night, it's quite clear in the documentation that's come out. There are legal requirements if you are an office holder. In theory, as a furloughed employee, you cannot undertake any work for your employer. A director or office holder that has statutory obligations to file accounts, for example, with Companies House or some other such statutory requirement, is able to do that even though they are furloughed, as long as they do not take an excessive amount of time to do it.
I think the other direction that came out yesterday was that it can't be revenue generating.
Yes.
So if it's yeah, as you say, the statutory requirements of keeping the company afloat, fair enough, but it can't be revenue generating. So I presume that's even chasing invoices. But
yeah, it's any real, they could volunteer to go and make sandwiches in the canteen or something. It's not making any money, it's helping the business run.
Yeah.
But they cannot be furloughed and make a profit. But if they are a director and do have statutory requirements to comply with, they are allowed to do that under the legislation.
And I think they've been quite clear, and we both agree that there will be a day of reckoning. When everything that we do is going to be looked at with some scrutiny, and particularly if you are if your company is looked after by an accountant or a bookkeeper, I think a lot of onus is going to be put on that bookkeeper to make sure that things are done properly here. We're doing this for the country basically. So it's going to be put on us.
And not to be scary about it, I think the government want us to help the employees, but we have to apply logic and be able to justify the decisions that have been made.
I don't quite know whether you covered this bit. Can you run the payroll if you're a furloughed director, if you know how to do that?
It's not revenue generating,
it's not revenue generating. If that's the only task they perform, I certainly wouldn't stop them, because it'd stop people being paid. And again, unless it's a full-time job, in some organisations, we all know that running a payroll is more than a full-time job, but for some, it's an hour's work. So, it depends on your workforce, it depends on the amount of time, but if the director is furloughed and their one role that they actually do is to pay the payroll, yeah, do it.
Get those people paid. And on that note, Faye again really wants to know, Jessica Harrison has also asked, can you be reimbursed? Say you don't have the money to pay, you don't pay the staff, but you run the payroll. Can you be reimbursed before you've actually paid the outstanding furlough wage?
No. There's no process in place at this point in time to pay it in advance. As we can furlough with effect from the 1st of March, if needs be. There's loads of people that have been furloughed in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. Their pay is due for April. At this point in time, there is no mechanism to even put in a claim, but we have been told it will be there during April. And it is going to be online. They are writing a portal. They're developing a portal for people to go on and do the claim, a bit like you do a VAT submission or submit your RTI information. There will be a portal where you go on, you enter the figures, you enter your PAYE number, and they will reimburse you, and the plan is within a matter of days. Now, what I have heard said is if employers do not have the money to do that, they should look to access the short-term loans that the government have made available to businesses. And again, it's all around making sure these employees can actually feed themselves, pay rent if it's due, but more importantly, we've got to keep a roof over everybody's head and food on the table. That is what the whole system is designed to do at this point.
But the delay is not in any way government trying to be mean with its money. It is purely to find a way of actually making it happen, isn't it? I mean, as you say.
Yeah, it literally is. What they will say is, you pay us every month. We don't have your bank details to pay you back. That's their argument. Some of it's right, some of it's wrong. But they're actually building a totally new system to implement these claims. So I don't think I would like to think that it is just a logistical issue with writing it, testing it, and making sure it works, because the last thing they want is a repeat of, for example, the universal credit fiasco that we had several years ago when it didn't quite work the way they thought. This is way bigger than that was, and they don't want to get it wrong. So they're just taking they're not even taking a long time, are they? Yeah, this was announced on what, something like the 20th of March or something.
Yeah.
To actually get a portal up and running and usable in less than 6 weeks is an incredible feat for them. You have to admire the work that is going on in the background.
Yeah,
even if you don't think they're doing a good job, they are doing the best they can with what they have.
As are we.
Yeah, absolutely.
As are we all. Doing the very best we can, holding on. Looking forward to the bank holiday weekend. So just a couple of questions. People looking for clarity.
She's getting one. That's what's really funny.
I know.
Bank holiday weekend, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be planting vegetable seeds and becoming self-sufficient. I can't get a darn delivery.
Yeah.
Some people asking for clarity on the contract. You did say earlier that you can't force somebody to be put on furlough, but the other option is to be made redundant. Do you need to agree the pay cut? Because presumably if it's 80%, that is a pay cut. And should there be a formal, some sort of formal letter in writing about the furloughing?
There should be a formal letter to confirm that the employee has agreed to be furloughed. Now, that in itself should be enough to cover the drop in salary, because furlough by definition means that your salary is taking a reduction to 80%. If it was me running the Sutton Seeds are online.
Yes, Rebecca. Thanks, Rebecca. Sutton Seeds online, Amy. What are you complaining about? You should be out in your garden now, get out there.
Sorry, that just distracted me somewhat.
I actually have the seeds already, so don't worry.
Oh, right, okay.
All you need is the compost, that's fine. If it was me, once I had agreement of the employees, and what you can't do, and they're quite clear about, is you can't go to your workforce and say, you're all being furloughed with effect from tomorrow. The employee has to agree. Once you've got the agreement from them, and to be fair, as we've mentioned before, if they turn around and say no, the chances are they're going to get made redundant because there is no work for them to do at the moment. Furlough does at least guarantee their position is held for them until this is over. One letter stating with effect from X date, you have agreed to be furloughed until further notice, I believe will cover the statutory requirement for paperwork.
I was going to say that we have asked ICB's technical support advisors to create a draft furlough letter, but it's fairly straightforward, but we will make that available by the end of the week, so you can download that for you or your clients, just to make it a little bit easier.
If I can interrupt just for a second there, I mean, throughout these shows, I've been saying, if you're alone by yourself, feeling completely cut off from the world, give our team a call and have a chat. And Samaya and the girls are telling me that they're getting quite a regular through flow of people who are ringing up and having some wonderful chats. And it's great for our team to have the opportunity to connect. On the email front, and I said, obviously, please send us emails if you can. I was boasting how quickly we turn these round, only to find out on social media that we are perhaps getting a bit clogged up. So I have checked. Yeah, we're getting thousands of emails at the moment. So we will get round to them as quickly as we can. I've created a bit of a problem there, I think, by being so open with what we're offering. We will do our best. We are catching up. But please don't keep sending them every hour on the hour to tell us that we haven't responded to the earlier one. It slows us down a bit. If we can have those, it would be great. So thank you very much. And for those of you who haven't been on all of these, we're all working from our respective homes, but we've got the normal phone system because it's a whiz-bang cloud-based system. So you still ring 0203 405 4000. You will get through to one of our team, and if they can't help you, they can transfer you through to somebody else if you want them, or somebody else for advice and guidance, just as if we were all still in the office. And so we do that. But our 3 lines, our free technical advice, free legal and free money laundering, well, anti-money laundering advice, I better stress that, they are still also available. So please do communicate with us. But I think we're clearing the backlog of emails. But yeah, the team was not very happy with me when I came off the line the other day, because all of a sudden we had an influx. A bit like the questions, Amy.
Julia Williams confirms that Sutton Seeds is indeed online and operating, because their sister-in-law works there and is working 6 days a week because they're so busy. So if anyone's interested,
right, okay.
That's the place to get your seeds for the bank holiday.
And is that the point at which we say other seed providers are available?
Yes,
that's true. Do shop around.
Yes.
But on the subject of the bank holiday, somebody has asked, Nikki, with a 1, has asked, how do we deal with bank holidays while furloughed? Is it just furlough money as normal? And do they get them back in lieu?
Nothing has been put in any document that I have read about dealing with bank holidays. And given that in April and May, we have 4 out of the 8 we have a year, we have a little bit of an issue to deal with. At this point, I would say go with the furlough. If they're on furlough, they're on furlough. We can deal with the bank holiday situation at a later point when we have had clarification. Don't think it's actually computed through to the powers that be about this yet.
I think it's going to be a bit difficult for particularly small businesses where they have, say, 5 people who come back in September or whenever and want, 5 bank holidays plus 3 weeks holiday, etc. I mean, if they're not careful, that will be what brings the business down at the end of the day, even though the business struggled by furloughing them to make it through it. Yeah, there's going to be some tough questions to be asked, I think.
There are, and I would also say these people that are furloughed are getting 80% of their pay not to go to work. There are some of us that are working incredibly long hours just to make sure that these people still get paid, and they're sitting at home and being paid for being, in some cases, and I don't mean everybody by any stretch of the imagination, some people are treating it as a holiday. They're doing all their DIY and their garden. If I go for a walk, when I walk the dog later, there will be people doing their front garden, and they'll be cleaning their cars, and they'll be having a little bit of party on the drive. And I'm like, I'm missing out because my car's not clean and my garden's not done because I'm working silly hours trying to keep up. I don't mean that furloughing is easy by any stretch, but I do think that there will need to be some give and take in terms of reasonableness about this. The government are paying you 80% of your pay not to work for the safety of everybody.
And I think one of the other big questions that's going to come out afterwards is where in the past people have asked if they can work from home and employers have said, no, it doesn't suit the business. They've now been forced to work from home. They're going to say, well, I've proved I can work from home now. So trying to coax them back into the office might also cause a few problems, but we still have to keep an eye on that one. Yeah,
and I think for any business where people have been successfully able to work from home, and the business has been suffering potentially massive overheads because they're keeping an office running, for example, it could be a way to reduce those overheads quite considerably for some organisations. There's nothing to stop you renting office space for a couple of days a month to have team meetings or whatever, but I really do think that when we come out of this the other side, there will be a very different working environment in some sectors.
Holding on the questions, Amy, the numbers seem to keep going up rather than down.
Is it okay to say we're I think we're flattening the curve? I don't know.
No, that's great.
Uncouth. There's a lady here, someone's client is a dental practice. The receptionist desperately wants to be furloughed, but isn't being furloughed. Is that just up to the employer?
Yes, but the question would be, why do they want to be furloughed? If they want to be furloughed because
they've got a dirty car.
Well, yes, there is that.
Oh, that was cruel.
Or an unkempt lawn.
Yeah, if they want to be furloughed because they're scared and they feel that it's they're in a dangerous situation, then they actually have no right to ask to be furloughed. If they have to self-isolate, or they have children to care for, or they have elderly parents living in the house, for example, and for safety's sake they need to be furloughed, then they can be. They can't, as one of my friends who is she's classified as a key worker in a call centre. She's like, I want to be furloughed. I went, don't work like that. You can't pick and choose. Sorry.
Yeah.
So no right to actually insist on being furloughed, but it is down to the employer. And I'm impressed the dentist is still working, actually, because all of the ones around here are shut.
Yeah, what would you actually be doing? I wonder, maybe just emergencies.
Maybe emergencies, but you certainly can't do dentistry with social distancing. Or at least I hope
or
you
even
can't.
With a mask.
Yeah.
How would you even get in there? Paula Vesey-Smith, who I presume is PBS as you, Paula, she's bumped this one because she's like, why won't you answer my question? I think she knows the answer personally, but she says, can I please check? If an employee handed in their resignation before the 28th of February to move to a new job, I'm assuming that they're not able to be furloughed by the employer of the original job, and also neither the new one.
No, we did touch on this earlier. They can go back to their previous employer and ask them to re-employ them and furlough them. The new employer can't, but if they were on the payroll, on the PAYE scheme as of the end of February, they can be re-employed and furloughed by their previous employer.
Even though it wasn't a COVID-19 related redundancy?
Yes.
Whether or not the ex-employer who has just been left by that employee decides that, yes, they will do the good thing, we'll wait and see. We'll check on with Paula in a while and see which way that one's going.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but it is, the guidance has been that the employee goes back to the previous employer on whose payroll they were on as at the end of February, and that employee is permitted to take them back on and furlough them.
Great, that's pretty nice. And Paula also wants clarification on whether, so say they don't get re-employed and then furloughed, would they have a right to their full pay in the notice period that they are working? Or do they get some sort of 80% of notice period pay?
That question confused me. Could you try that one again?
She says, so this is still the same employee who resigned?
Yes.
So say they are just going to resign and start working for company A.
Yes.
Would they have the right to their full pay in the notice period they are working?
So once they come off a furlough at the end?
No, so say they've just resigned. They've just resigned, but they're still working their notice period.
You mean,
they're currently.
Yes, I suppose they would get full pay, wouldn't they? Because they are not furloughed.
Yeah. So just to be clear, they are still employed now, not with a previous employer. They are working out their notice pay now. They're entitled to their notice pay unless they go on furlough, and then they're entitled to furlough. They're not going to, employment changes aren't really happening at the moment. And there's a reason government don't want people moving around at the moment to start a new job, clearly.
So you could be working your notice period and then be put on furlough and get 80% of the notice period pay?
Yeah, which would be 80% of your normal pay.
Interesting. Okay, well, it would be nice to have an update, Paula, on what happens with this client. Do they get re-employed and furloughed? Polly, this is actually just a totally different kind of question. Polly wants to know what payroll qualifications she should do if she's already completed ICB's level 3.
Level 3.
Done a level 3.
Okay, so there are a variety of level 5, 6 and 7 payroll qualifications available if people wish to do them. Myself, I have the MSc in payroll from Derby University, and I used to teach on that. That is available via the Chartered Institute of Payroll, but you need a level 5 qualification to access it. So there are a couple of options for level 5 qualifications. The most common one within the industry is the foundation degree.
That sounds quite weighty. Why no level 4 qualifications?
It's odd, yeah. Nobody knows. It's the same in the apprenticeships. They're doing 3 missing. They're not doing a 4 at the moment, are they? But they are thinking now of doing a 5. I think it's 4 they're missing, but it could also be 5 and going straight on to 6. Nobody really knows at the moment. Amy, I've just had an email through saying there are questions from Facebook stacking up in the chat group. Can you please make sure to have a look at those as well?
I know.
That's a lot of questions, Claire. You're doing well.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
If you have a load of questions that we don't manage to cover, if you want to send them over to me on a document, I'll do my best to answer them and send them back to you, because I am aware that there are a fair number coming in.
There's a fair number. I think that would be great, actually, because we are working on a kind of master FAQ document of super tricky questions. So Alison Pine and Pam are asking about employment allowance. If you're registered for employment allowance, can you reclaim the employer's NI through the scheme?
I'm going to say I don't know. Off the top of my head, I can't recall. I don't believe so, but I would need to double check it.
Okay.
Great. I think some of our branches are out there having competitions to see who can stump the speaker, but never mind.
To be fair, that wasn't one of the things I read up on to refresh my memory. I was focused totally on the new legislation stuff that was coming out. So yeah, I will need to come back to you on that one.
So Jessica Harrison says, "Thank you, Claire!" Exclamation mark. This is an invaluable webinar.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
That's lovely. So we're doing very well. Paula has come back and just said, how can the original employer re-employ the person who resigned? This happened before the furlough came in. They resigned in mid-February and they're working a month's notice. Yep. My feeling is that she should get her notice period paid in full, but shouldn't be furloughed.
The government have actually said anybody that is on a PAYE scheme on the 28th of February is entitled to be furloughed by that PAYE scheme. They want us to act as the benefits agency here. If the employer won't, that employee is at risk of having no income at all.
It's just to be hoped the employee didn't leave on slightly dodgy ground or tell her employer where to hide her calculator or something or other, you know. I mean, it's yeah.
There are always reasons to be nice to people, even though you don't know them at that particular time. So yeah. What is it they say about burning bridges?
That's it. Amy, we're going to tackle a few more. We've got about, I think we need to wrap up in about 5 minutes time, and then give me time just to put a few notices out. But thank you, Claire. If we can give you some questions to answer off screen, as it were, then we can put those up later. We have got an ever increasing Q&A section.
I'm sure you do. I'm more than happy to do my best, although I can see the ones about dentists and I really can't answer those.
Amy.
I think we've answered quite a few of these Facebook questions. I'm pretty confident. So Holly Rada on Facebook asked, are the grant payments counted as de minimis state aid, and will they therefore affect the employer NIC declarations?
We need to probably wait for the full details of the portal and how the claims will go through, it will be seen as a grant as opposed to a loan or anything like that. That I have seen, but in terms of the actual detail, we know what we need to have available when we do the claim, but for that level of detail, we're going to need to wait for a little bit more information to come out.
Okay.
Pauline's filling has broken.
When this all comes through to the accounts, the amount of money that you've been sent just on the furlough, your payment, we presumably know how that goes through the accounts. That's just going to be classed as income.
That's an income and an outgoing, isn't it? It's just
that's all it is.
Yeah. It's rather than an income, it's a grant, which can, it's not taxable income as such. It's a grant that is being used, and it's just money in, money out. Yeah,
sounds like a lot of businesses.
Yeah. It sounds like my bank account, actually. Mostly money out, and a bit more money out. But there's no profit element to it. I think that's the easiest way to define that, or at least there shouldn't be a profit element to it.
I think we should probably wrap up. There was just a couple of questions.
Okay, yeah, I think so.
Saying that if they can't afford to pay the wages and they can't get a business interruption loan scheme for whatever reason, what do you think they should do?
They should get a business loan scheme, though, shouldn't they? Because it's on guaranteed money from the government. That's what government is saying it's for.
Yeah, there are guarantees out there. What I would say is if they have tried and failed, they need to still furlough these employees. What I would potentially do is pay them only when the claim comes through. Maybe delay the payment. There are issues with that from a legislative point of view, but those grants should be available. The government are guaranteeing those grants, so there is absolutely no reason why businesses shouldn't get them. And
they are supposed to pay quickly, but perhaps if it is something that you're interested in and you want to do this, you should tune in tomorrow, because we have Nick Good from Revolut, the bank, the new challenger bank. So by virtue of their title as a challenger bank, they are challenging the high street banks, so that they're trying to do things differently, better, faster, quicker, cheaper. Let's see if we can take him at his word. But so Claire, it's been wonderful to have you on. As always, you've been great value, and people have got a lot of questions there. I know that we haven't got through all of them, but thank you for saying that you will take them afterwards, and we can follow those up, put them on the Q&A. So everybody, please look out for that. So we can't actually hear it, but those of you who are listening in, please a round of applause for Claire. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been my pleasure.
That's great. Thank you. It's great having such clever people linked to our institute. Our people who are experts in their field are great. We love having you with us, and we certainly cotton on to people like yourselves. We tend to avoid those people who claim that they are a guru for any reason, that they're going to tell us how to rule the world and everything else. Those people we give very short shrift to. But Amy, you need to tell us a little bit though now about the Inspire Tour, because that's coming up at the end of the month, and that's like this, but on speed, as they say. It's far more in depth. It's all about learn. Yes.
Yes, exactly. It's not a live Q&A, but it is structured learning content. So we're discussing the latest in AML and everything you need to do. And there were obviously some recent changes to the AML online form. Can't say they were loved by everybody, those changes, but there have been some changes. That was all because of the Fifth Money Laundering Directive that introduced some new stuff. So we're talking about AML, we're talking about just general compliance and ethics, which I think is going to be quite a good one in the current climate.
Yeah, very pertinent for when this is running, because I think at the end of this, ethics and everything else is going to be right at the head of everybody's list, really. Yeah.
Exactly. How do you make those decisions?
And the dates are?
The dates are the 28th, the 29th and 30th of April. So that's the last week of April. It is around 6 to 8 hours of content spread over 3 days. You will be able to watch the webinars at a time of your choosing. So don't worry too much if you can't make certain days or certain sessions, but to make sure that you are paying attention, there will be quizzes after the sessions, and if you pass every quiz and attend every session, you will get a badge to certify you as having excellent CPD, and you will get at least eight CPD points. I say at least because we may add a few more items of content depending on, you know, if we want to cover the portal, if that is probably going to be live at the end of April, we will cover that and we'll test you on it.
When you say a badge, do you mean literally a pin-on badge, or do you mean a badge to go on your website?
No, a virtual badge.
A virtual badge
that you can wear in isolation. Yeah.
I've been inspired. I'm an inspiring bookkeeper. Right? No, that's brilliant. So that's great. Also, to tell everybody, look out for where you get the events. You will see that there are a lot of branch meetings taking place at the moment. These are also virtual, but they are really, really going down very, very well. We've got somewhere in the region of double the number of people attending a virtual branch meeting. Obviously, you don't have to go out in the middle of the night and get your car, park it anywhere, walk and do anything like this. This is virtual, but it's still useful. You still get to meet people, you get to look at people. We can't let you see everybody on screen here because there are literally hundreds and hundreds of you watching this. So thank you all very much for being part. But you can do that sometimes with the branches, or at least you can see a lot of the people that are there. And it's very important that you get to know what's happening in your local area rather than this, which is obviously national, and meet and greet people, talk to people. There are some people who have got a lot of extra new business because of these new clients coming out. They need some help. There are others who are having to look after children. They might need some of your help, so there could be business in it for you. And if you're only just starting up, don't worry, get involved with your local network and what have you. We, on that front, a very special mention for Lucy Brown, who apparently has run a money laundering. It sounds like a very dry subject, but actually it's very important, the money laundering meeting. And she has laid down a challenge, I believe, you know, of whether or not she is the best AML branch. So thank you, Lucy, for that. I hope your son is continuing to have his pocket handkerchief, and I'm very pleased to be classed as being the inspiration for that. That's great. I think that's probably all I have to say at the moment. We're just coming up to 4:30, which would be great. So thank you, Amy, for being anchor again today. I think that's the posh phrase for it, isn't it, anchor? But anyway, okay. We are continuing tomorrow with Nick Good, as I've said before, from Revolut Bank. We've got other people lined up for the week. We're just picking and choosing a few now because this is becoming such an important audience. We've got a bit of a queue, and we're trying to figure out which would be the best people for you. And we do see this now as an ongoing thing. When you stop tuning in, then we might decide to pull it. But at the moment, the audience is actually growing, not dropping. So if you imagine we've got people booked on through our main database, through my ICB, we've got some people coming in through Facebook. We're getting more than almost, you know, 2,000 downloads later. We're on Facebook. So, you know, we're reaching with one of these productions somewhere in the region of about, say, 2,500 to 3,000 people a time. And, you know, these are unheard of numbers. This is absolutely fantastic. And we will be here for as long as you make us necessary and relevant. So finally, Claire, it was wonderful to have you on. I don't think you and I have actually met before. I popped into the back of your presentation at Summit and said hello. Well, I didn't say hello. I sort of realized things were going well, so ducked out and moved around. I didn't have a chance to speak to you. So it's very nice to speak to you and meet you virtually. I'm glad we got your technology sorted, because looking at a black screen might not quite have been as appealing. And yeah, thank you in advance for your Q&As, and good afternoon, everybody. Please stay safe, please be careful, and please don't nip out into the sun and make a mess of it and get yourself a bug. So anybody. All right, so bye everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.